And Michael, I was reading a number of reports and headlines coming out of all of the rookie mini camps over the past week and a half or so. And here are a few actual headlines and subheads for you. Bryce Young showing complete command at Panthers minicamp. Anthony Richardson puts dazzling skills on display, proves to have impactful presence. Bijan Robinson used everywhere at minicamp, looked great in individual drills and stretching periods open to media. So while minicamp is definitely the first step for these players getting acclimated to their teams, like, let's not anoint anybody a superstar just yet. Impactful presence is a little bit much for me here. But when you see all of these headlines, what's the first thing that comes to you to mind when it comes to like helping bettors and helping normal people get through this information the right way?
Well, we're not playing football, right? So we're in t-shirt, we're at gym class. And, what often happens is guys that come in, most of the rookies that come in, especially the early picks, have been traveling all over the country. And they've been going out and going to workouts, but they're not really in football shape. So when they come to camp, they're kind of sucking wind. They're hard. They got to get in shape. So you tend to have a perception of them that maybe they're not quite ready. And some guys that can show some skills, moving around, doing all that, yeah, they look good, but we haven't played any football yet. So I would say temper it. The one thing I do know, always every year you're in the league, there's always one or two players that have these incredible times in training camp or mini camps before any pads get put on. And and then when the pads come on, you can't find them. They just disappear. And so you have to be really careful. Like there's too many times where we used to say it when I was at the Raiders because we practiced in Alameda. The guy's on the all Alameda team because we couldn't make it to the roster. Yeah. So I think ultimately that's kind of what you have to really temper down. What I try to do in the article that I wrote for VSiN Online is I try to talk about situations that allow the player to really shine the highest. And there's a couple of them that jumped out at me. One I left off, Sam Laporte, the tight end from Detroit, because I put Gibbs on the list. But the number one for me was Dalton Kincaid, Stormy. I think Dalton Kincaid got drafted by the most perfect team for his skill set.
Before we get deeper into Dalton and what he does well, can you talk a little bit more about the important factors for a player, period, to have success out the gate with their team?
Yeah, I think the system has to match his talents, right? And in the situation that you use the player in, he's got to be so good and so skilled. Like Sauce Gardner last year, he was really, really good and the Jets defense was good and it got a lot of attention. And so you were able to see him. Kenneth Walker might have won Rookie of the Year, but he got hurt. So it's about situations. Like when I get put into this, can I shine? I didn't put any rookie. Bryce Young is perfectly lined because he's smart. He'll start probably. And if the Panthers win, he'll get the credit. So that's easy one to predict. But it's the ones that kind of fit perfectly into the scheme. For example, I talked about, like if you're a team like Philadelphia and you draft an outside rusher, let's say Nolan Smith, and you're playing from in front, and he ends up with 8 or 9 sacks, that's going to allow him to become Defensive Rookie of the Year, even though he may have only played 25% of the plays.
Mm-hmm. So what is it about Dalton Kincaid, then, to you, that makes him such a good fit for the Bills, that makes him a player that's going to work and make an impact quickly?
One of the things that has hurt the Bills is they haven't been able to run the football with physicality. Because they're in 11 personnel, one back, one tight end. With Kincaid, he will now be the second tight end on the field, although they'll align him like an F. So he'll be a big slot receiver. And he can block the support edge. He'll dominate that guy. It'll be a hard matchup. Defensive coordinators won't put a little corner on him because then the Bills can run the ball weak side because he'll dominate that edge. So you have to put a bigger guy. Now, when a bigger guy comes on the field, you've got to be able to cover Kincaid in one-on-one passing. And so can he win against that? Yes. So his skill set is perfect, right? He's a really good blocker. He's physical. He's tough. And he can catch the ball inside. And the Bills need that because the Bills need to be able to run the ball more out of 12. Last year, they spent almost the entire year trying to find a slot receiver. McKenzie was good for him at the end of 2 years ago, but then he wasn't the same player. They brought Beasley back. But I think Kincaid will be the version of Beasley where he'll catch a ton of passes and he'll make a lot of plays.
And I watch a lot of Pac-12 football. I watch a lot of Utah. And after seeing Brant Kuithe go down with an injury, Dalton Kincaid was so incredible for Cam Rising. Just a great security blanket, great hands, and so many people talking about what a pro-ready type of a player that he is. When you look at the Offensive Rookie of the Year odds going into next season, Michael, you can find him between 30-1 and 35-1. But there has not been a tight end who has won Offensive Rookie of the Year since Mike Ditka in 1961. So not even in the modern football era. Is it worth a long shot on somebody like him potentially to be the first tight end to break that mold because of the way he's used?
Because he's really not. He's going to be a big receiver, right? Kyle Pitts, we can call him a tight end. He don't play tight end. Kyle Pitts blocks no one. Now Kincaid can block, right? Kincaid can block. And Kincaid can play on the line wide, too. Whereas Kyle Pitts is not an on-the-line wide. He's a big slot receiver is what he is. There should be another designation of position. Slot receiver, big slot receiver. That's Pitts. Kincaid can do more. And so because of that, he could catch a lot of balls. I mean, he might catch 50, 60. He's going to get all those targets that Cole Beasley was going to get. And if he gets that many numbered targets and he catches that many passes, then all of a sudden, and the Bills win and they win the East and they get to the, all of a sudden people are going to say, well, that made a huge difference in their offense. Because I think what he can do is he's got a long catch radius too, which you need when you have Josh Allen. Even though Allen's improved his accuracy, he still needs receivers that can get the ball. And Kincaid can do that. I kind of dismiss the history of the tight end position because we are in where we are now is that there's really no true Ys in the league. There's very few true Ys.
Yeah, he's a slot receiver in a tight end named Cloak, basically. Here is how the recent winners have shaken out for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Last 2 years, each were wide receivers, and Garrett Wilson and Jahmyr Chase went QB before that with Justin Herbert and Kyler Murray, and then running backs back-to-back years before that with Saquon and Alvin Kamara. Since 2004, quarterback has been the most selected position. You mentioned earlier Bryce Young looks like an early candidate. He's one of the favorites, as is Bijan Robinson. But a fun stat for you here, Michael. Over the last 18 drafts, 14 of the eventual Offensive Rookie of the Year winners were drafted in the top 12. And if you take out offensive tackles, Bryce Young, Stroud, Richardson, Bijan Robinson, and Jahmyr Gibbs. And Gibbs, I know over there with the Lions, is another guy you think very, very highly of coming into this season and the fit working for him.
Yeah, because they don't have to adjust the fit, right? What they're going to do with Gibbs is they're just going to say, you are our DeAndre Swift. Mm-hmm. And when you look at what Swift was able to accomplish last year, when you break down his season and you look, he wasn't healthy in all the games, right? So he started 8 games, he only played in 14. But he was targeted 70 times in those games. And he had 48 catches. He would have had way more. And that's a low percentage of target to catches. That should be almost in the high 80s when you're a running back. And he averaged 8.3 yards per catch, which is outstanding. Now, you got to get it to 9 to be great. But I think, and he scored 3 touchdowns. I think Gibbs just walks right in there and plays that role. Swift only had 99 carries last year. He averaged 5 yards a carry. That kind of back. I think Gibbs comes in and he's already in a role. They have the role defined. And Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, understands how to utilize Kamara from his day, which is what he did with Swift. And I think Gibbs can come in and give them an instant impact. He's good in pass protection. Don't have to worry about that. And he adds an element to a offense that's already good. And the coach knows how to use him.
Yeah, and Kamara been a big comp for Jahmyr Gibbs. He did, as I mentioned a moment ago, won Rookie of the Year back in 2017. And what I love so much about Jahmyr Gibbs is just how fast he is. Yes, he ran the 4.36 at the combine, but you see it on tape. Like the acceleration that he has as a player is really, really fun to watch. Gibbs led the Tide in both rushes and receptions his junior year, and we haven't seen a running back do that and receive round 1 draft capital since Christian McCaffrey. So if that's any indication as to the type of player that he could potentially be at the next level, you gotta love what you have on tape. We were breaking down all of the intricacies of the latest article you put out discussing, yes, contenders for Offensive Rookie of the Year, but ways to understand why or why not a rookie might have a successful season, which leads us to our pro tip here that we do every single show, that in order to win Rookie of the Year, Michael, the scheme must match the talent, and most of all, the team needs to win games in order for a player to take that honor.
No question about that. And I think let's go further on Detroit, right? We talk about Gibbs being really important. Sam Laporte, the kid they drafted at the top of the second round. Remember, they traded T.J. Hawkinson after 7 games. And Hawkinson had what? I think he had like 40-some targets and 26 catches. Laporte's going to walk right in there, and he's going to be this slot receiver. He's going to be moved around quite a bit. And because of their ability offensively to move the ball in that offensive line, he's going to put up some really good numbers as well. So he's someone to consider too. And I know we're in this, tight ends don't really win Rookie of the Year, but I think it's going to be like Bijan Robinson on paper. Yeah, could he? But they've got some. Algier's a good back. They've got backs there, and I don't know how they're going to utilize them. I think the other thing you have to factor in is they got to help the team win. Mm-hmm. I mean, Sauce Gardner helped the Jets establish their defensive dominance last year. I mean, that's what made the Jets. It was obvious. Same with Gabriel Wilson, even though he wasn't getting the ball, on a regular basis because of the quarterback. But they showed so much in the biggest city of the world, that they could do that. So I think all those factors have to come into play.
And with the Lions, they were a team that everybody loved coming out of Hard Knocks, right? And Dan Campbell and talking so highly about them. They get off to this 1-6 start. Everybody's pretty down on Detroit. And then they close the season so strong that the expectations coming into this year are really high. And the way that the division has changed with Aaron Rodgers coming out of it seems like there's a lot of opportunity for the Lions, hence why we see their win total at 9.5. And if a team is poised to get double-digit wins, it makes sense if one of their stars is a rookie for them to be there in the Rookie of the Year category. What is it? Yeah, 8 of their last 10 games of the season, they end up winning. So Jahmyr Gibbs, somebody we talked about a good bit. Another player that you are targeting in this offensive Rookie of the Year discussion, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Why do you think he's such a fit in Seattle?
Well, because they've got great skill out there. And I think when we look at receivers, who's going to get doubled? Where does the coverage go to? Who do they take less of? And Seattle, for what they've been doing the last few years, they did 2 rookie tackles that started every game as rookies. They got Metcalf on the outside. Lockett's a really good player. Noah Fant catches a lot of passes. So, who's going to get one-on-one coverage? Njigba, he's in the slot, and he's going to be able to get the ball there. Last year, they would put Lockett in the slot. They would move around, but I think this kid is a really good slot receiver, most talented receiver in the draft. He's got the ability to catch inside. He can win. He's not the fastest guy, but he's a savvy route runner. And the fact that he can play in there with the talent that they have on the outside and the protection if the quarterback gets, this is really good. Then layer in the running back situation. I think the back makes the slot receiver more effective. And when you have a back like Kenneth Walker or Charbonnet that they drafted from UCLA, I think that's how you say his name, Stormy.
Charbonnet, yeah.
Charbonnet, that gives them another element. This offense is really well stocked. It really is, and it worked well. And if Geno protects the ball like he did last year, there's a great opportunity. And I think Njigba is going to make a lot of plays and catch a lot of passes and convert a lot of third downs. And Seattle was a playoff team last year. I think if you're going to win Rookie of the Year, you got to be on a good team.
Yeah, first receiver taken in this year's draft for a reason. And, of course, you mentioned it in the article and just there as well, coming off of the injury. But all of the reports and him talking to media said that he feels 100%. Obviously, they want to take things a little bit slow here in the offseason, but that he's going to be back great, healthy, and ready to go from day one is awesome for Jackson Smith-Njigba in that offense. Do you think Seattle could push the 49ers in the division for the NFC West?
I do. I think Seattle, for the first time, when you break down their roster, look, they got to get better defensively. They were, the thing that's a perception, too, more than anything, is Seattle, they have a home field advantage. Well, that didn't really manifest itself last year, right? I mean, they didn't win the home games that you thought they would. But I think getting Drummond Jones in there really helps them, gives them a 3 technique. Jarrett Reed, who they've had before, they bring him back. I mean, he's another physical guy that they could play. They're still probably short a pass rusher, but I do think they're getting better defensively. Jordan Brooks makes a ton of tackles. They bring Bobby Wagner back, gives them some more leadership. They changed who they are coverage-wise. They're different. I like Seattle's team, and they got a great punter and they got a great kicker. And those two things matter when you're trying to make playoff runs. You got a kicker that can make that's the closer, because they are the Mariano Rivera. And when you have a great kicker, it's the closer. And when you have a punter that can control field position, it helps your defense. They're probably a draft away from becoming a really good defense. I think Weatherspoon helps them. I think he's going to be a really good cover guy to go along with Woolen, who had so many interceptions last year. They're close. I really think they're close. Look, you're a fan. You saw that game last year. They had a chance to – they turned that ball over as they were driving it down again. They moved the ball on San Francisco effectively.
Yeah, Pete Carroll always makes things tough on the 49ers. Devin Witherspoon, by the way, 9-1 in the defensive rookie of the year market. Deonte Banks, somebody that you were drawing folks' attention to in the article, he's a 20-1 shot in the defensive category.
Yeah, and why do I like Banks over some of these other corners? Like Gonzalez, I think Gonzalez has got really good talent. But the way New England plays, they're not an instant pass rush team. They're kind of going to take it away. Now, J.C. Jackson was able to make a lot of plays on the ball. Last year we saw them have picks. Jock Jones made some plays. But I think when a corner that understands the defense and can cheat a little bit, like when you're playing for the Giants, they're going to run overload pressures. The ball's going to come out quick. They're going to attack the protections. And if you're really good at the top of the route, like Banks is, then you're going to have a chance to get your hands on a lot of footballs. And if you get those interceptions, that's going to get you Rookie of the Year, especially if the Giants, who were a playoff team last year, if they strengthen that area of their secondary. It'll be interesting to see how this all manifests itself. I think Banks was a good player. I like Emmanuel Forbes, too, here. But I think Emmanuel Forbes, what I wrote in the column was, Washington doesn't put that overload. They rely on their four guys. They have blitzes, obviously, but they want their four guys to get there, and they want to be able to rely on the coverage a little bit at times. And I think ultimately that lends itself to getting sacks. It doesn't lend itself to getting interceptions, which is why the Washington football team only had 9 interceptions last year.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. And with Banks, I know that he was a player you really, really liked coming into the draft before you even found out where he was going to be going. So now you combine that with the fit, certainly will work.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.